Welcome, everyone. So excited to be with you here today, as always. And I try and do this as much as possible when I'm doing a solo episode. Just take a moment to kind of settle you in. And today's topic is going to be about creating change from your heart. And so I feel like it's very important today that we start with a little guided meditation, a little true north activity, time to settle in, calm yourself from the busyness of life, because what we do is we create the busy a lot of the times. We create it on our own, right? We just create more and more work and more this. And so I'm going to ask you right now to take control of your life in this moment right now and not create busyness or craziness or overactivity of the mind. Take a moment to be on your breath, calm your nervous system down, calm your body down, calm your mind down. And then once you do that, everything works better. So let's take a moment to do that now. So if you're not driving or doing something where you can't close your eyes, then feel free to close your eyes. If you're not going to close your eyes and you're wanting to just kind of stare ahead, that's fine too. I'm going to close my eyes with you. And we're going to try something a little bit different today around counting your breaths to get you into a very calm state. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to count with you, and we're going to do five inhales in, and then we're going to hold it for 2, and then we're going to exhale to the count of 7. So let's try it now. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it for 2. 1, 2, and now exhale for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I want you to keep that on your own now. So go ahead and at your own pace, keep this breathing rhythm going where you're inhaling for 5, holding for 2, and exhaling out of your mouth for 7. You don't have to do it out of your mouth, just exhaling for 7. Really just focus on this pattern and this breathing to calm yourself down and to give your mind something to do. Just going to do that for a little bit of time here. And while you're counting the breathing, I want you just to take a moment to envision just a calm energy coming across your whole entire body. And remind yourself that whatever distractions or worries or fears you may have, that you're not going to worry about those right now, just for this little bit of time. Just relax, fully relax into this moment. So when you're done with your last exhale, and just let your breathing follow a natural rhythm and begin to just feel what it's like to be calm. Try and be right here, right now. No distractions, no monkey mind conversations, as they call it. If you can, and if you can't, that's okay too. This is a space for no judgment, no judging yourself. We're not going to judge each other here. Okay, you can take one nice deep breath in, exhale out. And when you're ready, open your eyes and we're going to come back together and start today's episode. Well, we've already started it, but the part where I share a message. Thanks for engaging in that with me. And today I really wanted to focus on creating change from your heart. So what does that really mean? The podcast is called, I just recently switched the name to Changemaker EDU. And the EDU obviously means education, or it's obvious to me. Changemaker means that you're creating change. The U to me is a play on words because it's U like university, like a place to learn. And it's also you like YOU, meaning that, in my opinion, my deep belief is that all change comes from within you and then radiates out. So let's talk about what it means to create change from your heart versus fear. So if you stay with me and you agree that all change comes from the inside out, that your internal landscape or your inner sanctuary is where peace and quiet and stillness and the flow of life all happens, then if you're creating change in the education space and you're saying, I really don't like X, Y, and Z, if you are trying to create change from a place of fear, meaning that you are afraid of what's currently happening in your situation, then you're going to perpetuate more of that fear because you're bringing that into the spaces you're in, right? And so you're going to hear some really great interviews that I have coming up. And I wanted to highlight some of those to kind of speak to this fear versus expansion and change making from the heart versus change making from the limitations of fear. So I'm speaking pretty quickly, in a little bit tomorrow, actually, but it won't air for a while, with Mary Jo Fairhead, who I've mentioned to you before, but she started Onward in South Dakota. And she's an example of somebody who was in fear a lot. And when I talk to her, I'm sure she'll share this about this dream she had of creating a school. And then she was able to really overcome that fear and follow through on her dream. And her dream was coming from deep inside of her heart. I spoke with Adam Carter, a former colleague of mine, when I was chief schools officer at Summit Public Schools. He was the chief academic officer, and we worked very closely together. He's a good friend of mine. And he spoke about his new organization, Point B, which is going to be focusing on how do you create purpose for young people between the ages of 17 and 22, I believe. How do you help them navigate and chart their life purpose so that they have positive and productive post-secondary choices after high school? Super excited about that. I spoke with Matt Beaudreau, who opened Acton schools here out in Sacramento, in Placer County, out in my area. And he speaks to his vision for creating more micro schools across the country that are similar to Acton, but a little bit different because they're coming from his deep creation, his heart. And I also spoke with Scott Bess, who started Purdue Polytechnic. And you'll feel a real deep wisdom from Scott. And he's not doing this out of fear or out of ego. He's doing this for service. And so the through line between all four of them is that they are deeply committed to service. And that's where the heart comes from. When you're thinking about status and competition and achievement and comparison, that's where your ego operates, and that is fear. So as you're embarking upon this change-making journey, if you're listening now and you're really excited about, there's something within me, like I keep saying, there's something within you that wants to come forward, and nothing is too small or too big in terms of how we're going to classify it, right? Because the egoic mind will classify something as big or small, like, well, I'm not starting a school. I'm only doing X. So we're not going to play that game. Whatever's coming through you, whatever your mission is, whatever your destiny is, wants to come through you. And your job is to locate, is this coming from a place of fear or is this coming from a place of love? And what I can tell you is when you start to tap into that place of love, that feeling where you just feel like this is coming from my heart and this is something I want to bring into the world, it feels differently. And you start to want to serve the people in the community that you'll be in or that you want to create or you want to be part of or you're already in and you want to do something in your own way. You start to notice that things start to work out for you. Things start to fall into place. And it's that following those breadcrumbs, when you can create change from the depths of your heart, where you'll start to see many things change. So if you're looking at creating change and you're not sure what to do, think about what wants to come through you. We started with a short meditation because when you're in your busy daily life, you're in the limitations of your mind and fear. That's just the way we're wired. Okay. And I'm going to have guests on here that speak to this, that speak to the nervous system and the reptilian brain and different things that I know kind of the basics of. But I want the experts to come on and explain to us, how are we wired and why is it called the reptilian brain? And why do we live perpetually in a state of fear, even though we're not living in the jungle anymore or whatever, right? Why do we constantly look for fear around the corner? Why are we constantly worrying about future and going over in our brain over and over the things from the past? Why can't we just live right here, right now? It's because it's the way we're wired. So I think it's really important that we start to understand that, because as you're dreaming about your change making concept that you're bringing out, I want to make sure that you're understanding the limitations that are being put upon you. You can overcome those. So, for example, when you are in the limitations of fear, you are going to be stuck. You're going to see every single obstacle that you can see. And some people will clear those obstacles by meeting fear where it's at, right? Wrestling fear to the ground and tying it up in the corner until it comes back next week or a year later. And you're continually wrestling and fighting and pushing with fear for your whole life. What I'm advocating for is that you see the limitations of fear and you see that fear can be your friend and you don't have to fight it, but you can send love to the fear within you. You can begin to say, hey, listen, this change, this thing I'm co-creating and birthing into the world is mine with a capital M. And it's coming from my heart. It's coming from love. It's coming from the flow of life. It's coming from the universe. And there's nothing you can really do to stop it, Mr. Fear, right? You can distract and block and do different things. But when you're coming from that place, then you can navigate anything that comes your way. And it's getting really clear, being aware. I've spoken about self-awareness in other episodes. It's getting really clear with what is the story in your head about this particular fear. So maybe it's like, for example, when I talked to Mary Jo, she didn't know how she was going to go from working full-time with small children to launching a school. That seemed like a Herculean task, and there was no way she was going to overcome that. So we worked together, and we didn't just go right into, okay, let's talk about what your plan is. Let's talk about your strategic plan. Let's talk about your timeline, your calendar, and all of that. Because when I work with people, and for those of you listening, when I share information and I share messages, I want you to understand that we got to get to the root. So Mary Jo and I worked together for a long time before she started to work on her school. We did one-to-one coaching. She was in one of my communities, and we were able to see that there was fear there, and she can share what she wants about this. I'm not going to get into that personally, obviously, but she was worried about these massive obstacles, and we had to break them down and we had to get to the root, because they do feel like massive obstacles when you're facing them. But you can break them down slowly but surely. You can begin to see that you're coming from a place of expansion, and you can start to move slowly but surely in that direction. It doesn't have to happen overnight. There's a reason why everyone always says Rome wasn't built in a day, but it can happen and it can come into your life. And it's doing that inner excavation. Changemaker, EDU. It's looking within yourself and trying to understand, where are these fears really coming from? So when I started Growth Public Schools, I was scared to death. I left my job that I'd been at for 9 years, and I had gone from a teacher, a principal, executive director, chief schools officer, essentially like assistant superintendent, to the executive cabinet. And it was crazy for me to leave, but it was coming from my heart. And when you're really connected to the depths of your heart, that truth, that's deep within you. And maybe you felt it a little bit in our silence today, or in our in our stillness and our meditation. Maybe you felt it a little bit today. You started to feel like this is what it feels like to know the truth. And so I knew with no doubt in my mind that I was supposed to go and start this school. It was highly illogical. There were 5 million fears. And honestly, one of the reasons I started this podcast is I want to help you not have to go through what I went through in terms of navigating those fears, because I was constantly living in the part of my nervous system that was shut down and that was going to fight or flight or freeze and not feeling good. And that's why when after the first year of the school opened, I pushed so hard. And like I said, I fought those fears off, and I put them in the corner, and I kept tying them up in the corner, and I kept tying them up and tying them up. And I kept working through the fears on the outside, not going deep within to see what fears were ruling me on the inside. Because fear will give you the limitation of this little tiny box. Your heart will give you the expansion and the infinite possibility of anything is possible. So I connected to my heart and I got into anything's possible. I'm opening this school. I don't have a choice. It became a choiceless choice. And if you feel this, Mary Jo starting her school, choiceless choice. The work that Scott Best has done, that Matt Boudreau has done, that Adam Carter's done, it becomes a choiceless choice because it's coming from your heart and you want to serve, and you see the obstacles and you work through them. So I was scared to open GPS, Growth Public Schools, and the fears overtook me so much because it took me 2 years to open it. And I mean, it took me several years to dream it up, but the actual execution of opening it was 2 years. And there were so many fears about, am I going to have enough money? Will I ever be able to get back to where I was when I left my executive job? Am I doing something that's irresponsible for my family? Will I actually even like living where I'm living? Because we also moved to a new city. Like there were so many unknowns and so many fears and so many stories running in my head at 100 million miles per hour that it literally made me sick to where I couldn't get out of bed for several months. So my hope for you is that you are able to create something from your heart. Oh, this is perfect. I didn't even remember this when I was going to hit record. I just released an episode with Jethro Jones, and he talked about the sage perspective and the saboteurs. So you can think about this framework in the same way that I'm talking about. The saboteurs would be the limitations of the egoic mind and the fears that are in your head. And the sage perspective would be the heart, the expansive nature of the heart. So Jethro said, I recall this, and it became one of the clips I put on social media. He said he wanted to start a school several times. And he just realized now why he didn't do it after all these years, because he was operating from the saboteurs, from the fear. He was operating from a place of fear, and he wasn't ready. And I can't remember if he said this, but I don't think he's ready right now. And he knows he will be at some point, because he's starting to really connect with that sage perspective. So check out that episode, because it's a different framework than what I usually use, but it's the same concept, which is connect with the truth of your heart, see that clearly, shift from the limited perspective. Like hopefully you shifted from this limited perspective and you listened with your heart a little bit more, because we spent 3 or 4 minutes doing a meditation. So you begin to do that throughout your daily life. And you start to see that those fears you have about your dream, your change-making dream, it starts to come through you so seamlessly. And I fundamentally believe that we are going to change the education system one change maker at a time, and a community like this one at a time, one community, one change maker at a time, because there's a paradigm shift happening in education, and it is time for it to change. And there's exciting things going on, and I can't wait to continue to bring more and more people sharing with you. I remember Matt Boudreau said, the average person, and maybe even the quote unquote average or normal educator, doesn't really know about a lot of these different alternative options, because we've all been to school and we've all learned that school should be a certain way. And so when you can get deep into your heart and see the infinite possibilities of what's possible, that's how we're going to come together and create massive change in the education system. And it's going to start with conversations like this. I know it's not really a conversation because it's a monologue, but it's going to start with creating spaces like this where we can have these conversations, where we can start to ask ourselves, what is it? What's my role? What is my role as an education changemaker? Your homework for this week or for the next couple of weeks until I do another solo episode is to ask yourself, what is my role? We all have a role. What is my role in creating the best place for our kids so that when every parent drops off their child every day or when they're homeschooling or however they're doing it, they feel 100% certain, they feel amazing that their child is getting a great experience. Whether they're unschooling, homeschooling, traditional schooling, charter schooling, whatever it may be. And every child and every parent can feel that they're getting the best experience. They're learning, they feel safe, they feel love, all the amazing things that we know that make schools great, that make education great. You'll hear from Matt Bodro about how there's a difference between schooling and education, which I thought was really, really great. So anyway, that's the message today. Find what wants to come through your heart. Befriend the fear, notice the fear, watch the fear, take small steps toward the change making that you desire. And together, one is a million. It's a ripple effect. And as we all get together and do this more and more and more, we will continue to see more change within the education space. All right, everyone, have a great day.